Good morning, Secretary Mayorkas.
Good morning.
Is there a crisis at our southern border?
Senator, there is a very significant...
That's a yes or no question.
There's a very significant...
Is there a crisis?
Senator, there's a very significant challenge...
I think your microphone is not on.
There is a very significant challenge that we are facing.
Yes or no,
at the southern
is there
border.
A crisis?
I believe I've addressed that question.
So you're refusing to answer?
Senator, there is a very significant challenge, and
will you answer if there's a crisis?
Therefore, we are dedicating the resources...
Okay, so you're refusing to answer. Well, Secretary Mayorkas, I'll tell you someone who is willing to answer.
Hey, Patriots. Welcome back to the channel. If you love this country, value our sovereignty, and are tired of watching the Biden administration wreck the rule of law at our border, you're in the right place. Today, we're reacting to the smoking hot exchange between Senator Ted Cruz and Secretary Mayorkas about the southern border crisis. Yes, I said crisis because that's exactly what it is. Now, if you haven't seen this, buckle up. Senator Cruz absolutely grilled Secretary Mayorkas, asking him over and over, is there a crisis at the border? Is America less safe? Are migrants dying? Are children being trafficked because of Biden's open border policies? And you know what Mayorkas did? He danced. He dodged. He refused to answer with a simple yes or no, just like the bureaucrat he is.
Which is, you're and President Biden's chief of the Border Patrol, in a sworn deposition in July of 2022, when asked, would you agree, Chief Ortiz, that the southern border is currently in crisis? Answer, yes. Notice none of those wiggle words, none of that equivocation. One word, one syllable, yes. Are you willing to speak with the same clarity as Chief Ortiz? Is there a crisis at our southern border, yes or no?
Senator, I'm very proud to work alongside...
But you refuse to answer. Let me ask you the next question. Has the crisis at our southern border made Americans less safe, yes or no?
Senator, we are dedicated to the safety
and security. Has the crisis made Americans less safe? I don't want a discourse. It's a yes or no question.
Senator, we have a challenge of
You refuse to answer the question. Mr. Secretary, let me show you how someone doing his job answers a question in a straightforward manner. Chief Ortiz, is the crisis that is currently ongoing at the southern border making the border less safe for Americans and aliens alike? Answer, yes. One word, one syllable, 3 letters. That's how someone answers a question and does their job. You're being a politician misleading the American people. Let me give you a chance again. Will you show the same integrity Chief Ortiz shows? Is the crisis at the southern border making Americans less safe? Yes or no?
Senator, we have 260,000
You refuse to answer the question. Let's move on.
And security of the American
Next question,
people.
Mr. Mayorkas. Has the crisis made aliens less safe? Yes or no?
Senator, we are seeking...
So you won't answer that question either. It's a yes or no. Has it made aliens less safe?
Senator, smugglers are exploiting...
Has the crisis made aliens, yes, less safe? Are you willing to answer it?
Senator, the smuggling organizations...
Okay, you're filibustering again. Let me ask you this question. How many migrants have died under President Biden?
Senator, your phrasing of the question is actually quite misleading.
How many migrants died in 2022?
Approaching our southern border?
Yes.
Precisely why we are seeking to exclude the smuggling
do you know the answer? Do you know how many died?
I do not.
You do not. Of course you don't. I know how many died. 853.
That is
853. And by the way, here are the numbers that have died every year. You go back to 1998, you see it's consistently between 300 and 400, 300, 400, 300, 400. Suddenly, 2021, what happens? You get in office, and that red line are dead bodies. I've been on the Rio Grande, and I've seen dead bodies floating there who've drowned because of your refusal to do your job. You don't even know how many have died. What do you say to the Texas farmers and ranchers who find pregnant ladies dead on their property, who find toddlers dead on their property? What do you say to them?
I say that is why precisely we are taking it to the smuggling organizations.
But you are not. That is simply not true.
Number two, it is why we are dedicated.
Let me read from the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal 2 weeks ago ran an article entitled, "It's like a graveyard. Record numbers of migrants are dying at the border." The story begins with this chilling line, quote, Eagle Pass, Texas. Local officials keep a refrigerated truck to hold the bodies of migrants who drown in the currents of the Rio Grande while trying to cross the border into the U.S. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record. Let me ask you a different question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under the Biden administration?
Senator, this is precisely why we instituted.
I don't want to lecture. It's a question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under your administration?
Senator, this is exactly why on January 5th we announced the parole
do you know
program.
how many? Do you know how many children have been sexually assaulted?
This is why we.
Okay, you're going to refuse to answer that question as well. Let's move on. It's obvious you've been instructed to stonewall, so I'm not going to let you. You don't get to stonewall and filibuster. Now, one of my Democratic colleagues before said the Democrat talking point, quote, "This problem didn't start under Biden." Look, I get if you're a partisan spinner, you got to figure out something to say about the absolute catastrophe that has played out under the Biden administration. True or false, Secretary Mayorkas, 2020 was the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. Is that true or false?
It is certainly the lowest level of immigration in many, many years. And what was it in 2020? What was it, Senator, in 2020 that impacted the entire world, including the United States?
Okay, so your testimony is the reason we had the lowest rate was COVID. It had nothing to do with building the wall, nothing to do with ending catch and release, nothing to do with Remain in Mexico. With all respect, Mr. Secretary, that answer is laughable. And in fact, if you look at illegal immigration, let's look at CBP encounters. You can see 500,000, 500,000, it drops to the lowest level, and boom, what happens? You show up. And that red line is you. That red line is Joe Biden. And you're claiming nothing happened. Oh gosh, this was here before us. No, you made the decision to allow this to happen. Let me ask you, we now have over 5.5 million people who've entered this country illegally under Joe Biden. How many murderers have you released into America?
Senator, I'm not aware of any murderer whom we've.
So you don't know.
Senator, let me say something.
Do you know?
If you take a look at.
No, you don't get to give a speech. Do you know how many murderers you've released?
I'm just trying to answer your question.
How many rapists
Senator.
have you released?
Senator, I'm trying
to
answer your question.
You can answer, I know or I don't know.
Senator, any individual who poses a public safety threat.
How many child molesters have you released?
And removed into the United States, from the United States.
Oh, so your testimony under oath, subject to perjury, is that you have not released any murderers, rapists, or child molesters among the 5.5 million. Is that your testimony?
Mr. Chairman, may I have the opportunity
No, you may not. You may answer my question.
You're not
Is that your testimony, yes or no?
Senator, you're not allowing me to answer your question.
I am allowing you to answer. I'm not allowing you to filibuster.
If you take a look at the pace of immigration in 2018 to 2019.
You're refusing to answer. Let's move on. Let's move on to gotaways. Gotaways are the people that get away that you know about. Now, what happened under your administration? Gotaways consistently down at this low line. Boom, you get in. And they go from below 180,000 to 600,000. Now, I'll tell you this about a gotaway. You don't know among those 600,000 a year, you have no idea how many are murderers, correct?
That is precisely why the
Correct?
number of gotaways.
Do you know how many of those are murderers?
That is precisely
So you
why.
refuse to answer the question. You know how many are rapists? Do you know how many are rapists? This is a question. You're a lawyer. You know how to answer questions. Of the 600,000, do you know how many of them were rapists?
Senator, this is why
the answer is no. Let me ask you this. Do you know how many of them are terrorists? And I don't want to, Senator, here's my lecture on this. Do you know how many of the 600,000 gotaways were terrorists? Yes or no?
Senator, we are focused on the
You refuse to answer that as well. What's the result of massive gotaways? Well, one of the results is drug overdoses. And we now have, last year, over 100,000 overdoses who died, the majority from Chinese fentanyl streaming across the border. Now, you told Senator Cornyn, you care, but look what has happened under your policy. When you open up the border to the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history, people die. You claim you care. Mr. Secretary, that is a lie. You know, some months ago, Karine Jean-Pierre stood up at a White House briefing and said, people are not just walking across the border. Was she telling the truth?
Senator, you are
Was she telling the truth?
So profoundly disrespecting.
Was she telling the truth?
22 years
okay,
of government service.
You get to answer questions. You don't get to give speeches.
Senator, I served as a federal prosecutor.
All right, you're refusing to answer. If you look at, she was lying, and she was not lying on her own. She was lying on behalf of the President of the United States. Now, the photograph of people walking. She was lying on behalf of the President of the United States. This is a photograph from just one day along the Rio Grande of hundreds of thousands of people walking across the border. You have allowed this to happen. The photograph that was before, what are these wristbands?
I don't know what they are.
You don't know what they are. Mr. Secretary, you have just testified to the American people you're incompetent at your job, because I've been to the southern border, and if you go to the southern border, along the southern border, you see thousands of these wristbands because the illegal immigrants wear them. The drug cartels, every color corresponds to how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. You have turned these cartels into multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations, and these are modern-day leg irons because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are. That is astonishing. Mr. Secretary, how many children have been sold into sex slavery under your administration?
Senator, we are taking it to the cartels.
How many children have been sold into sex slavery? Do you know how many children have been sold into sex slavery?
To an unprecedented degree.
Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now,
it is precisely
your behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet, and if you had integrity, you would resign. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Border Patrol, they've never had a political leader undermine them. They despise you, Mr. Secretary, because you're willing to let children be raped to follow political orders. This is a crisis, it's a disgrace, and you won't even admit this human tragedy is a crisis.
Let's break it down. First off, the question everybody's asking, is there a crisis at our southern border? Senator Cruz asked it straight up. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. And what did Mayorkas do? He called it a very significant challenge. That's not an answer. That's a politician's way of avoiding the truth. When you can't even say the word crisis, you're either in denial or willfully misleading the American people. Now let's compare that to Border Patrol Chief Ortiz, who in a sworn deposition said it point blank. Yes, there's a crisis. No waffling, no spin. Just the truth, something we don't get from the Biden administration. Next, Cruz asked, has the crisis made Americans less safe? Another yes or no question. Again, Mayorkas refuses to answer. Patriots, this isn't just frustrating, it's dangerous. When our leaders can't even admit that letting millions cross the border illegally makes us less safe, that's a betrayal of their oath to protect us. Let's be real, cartels are running the border. Fentanyl is flooding our communities. Criminals and terrorists are slipping through, and Mayorkas won't even acknowledge the basic reality that Americans are less safe. Cruz brings up a horrifying statistic. 853 migrants died at the border in 2022. That's the highest ever recorded. Before Biden, deaths were around 300 to 400 a year. Now we've got a red line on the charts, and it's literally a line of dead bodies. And what's Mayorkas' response? I don't know. He doesn't even know how many people have died under his watch. That's not leadership, that's neglect. And it's not just numbers. Cruz read from the Wall Street Journal about refrigerated trucks holding migrant bodies in Eagle Pass, Texas. This is the predictable result of open border policies. The Biden administration's refusal to secure the border is killing people. Then comes the truly sickening part. Children being sexually assaulted and trafficked because the border is wide open. Cruz asked point blank, how many children have been assaulted by human traffickers? Mayorkas won't answer. Either he doesn't know or he doesn't want us to know. He's supposed to be the guy in charge of Homeland Security. If he doesn't know, that's incompetence. If he does know and won't say, that's a cover-up. Either way, it's unacceptable. Let's talk about gotaways, the hundreds of thousands of people who evade Border Patrol and disappear into America. Under the Biden administration, that number has skyrocketed. Cruz asks, how many of those are murderers, rapists, child molesters, or even terrorists? Mayorkas doesn't know. He can't say. You know what that means? He's not doing his job. He's gambling with American lives. We have no idea who's coming across. And with fentanyl pouring in, over 100,000 Americans dying from overdoses last year. The consequences are deadly. Cruz pulls out those wristbands that illegal immigrants wear, color-coded by the cartels for how much they owe. Mayorkas claims he doesn't know what they are. That's either a lie or incompetence. Anyone who's been to the border knows what those wristbands mean. They're modern-day shackles for human trafficking victims, especially children. Patriots, this is bigger than politics. This is about the soul of our country. Our leaders are supposed to protect us, not endanger us. Mayorkas' refusal to answer basic questions is a slap in the face to every American who wants a secure border and a safe nation. I stand with Senator Cruz. We need officials who tell the truth, who enforce the law, and who put Americans first. The Biden administration's border policies are a disgrace, and Mayorkas should resign. We need to take our country back, secure the border, stop the chaos, and restore the rule of law. If you agree, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share this video. Let's wake up America before it's too late. God bless you, God bless our Border Patrol, and God bless the United States of America. Until next time, stay strong, stay vigilant, and never stop fighting for our country. See you in the next video.